Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first Guernsey Wedding Forum live stream. I'm going to wait for a few people to arrive. If you can hear me okay, can you type in the comments that I'm A-OK or whatever you want to say. But if you can't hear me very well, please let me know in the comments. I'll wait for a few of you guys to reply. There's about a 25-second delay between me talking and you being able to respond. But once we've got some interaction, I'll give a bit of an intro and then hand over to our guests where they can do a bit of an intro about their business. So whilst we're waiting, and whilst I'm waiting for comments to come through, Lucy Thompson says a good thumbs up. Jacqueline Ward says loud and clear. Awesome. Thank you, guys. So we'll start off with, whilst we're waiting for people to arrive, if you are getting married in the future, let us know in the comments. Give the date if you want to, give the month if you want to, month and year, or just the year, whatever you prefer. Let us know when you're getting married, and give us a good feeling for the type of people or the audience we've got here. If you're watching the replay, it would help if you, so this is for anybody who's watching it after the event, after it's live. If you're watching the replay and catching up, just type replay in the comments as soon as you hear this, and then it'll bump it back up in our feed and we can get a good idea of who's come along. And also, during this stream, either live or if you're watching it on replay, if you have any questions, ask away in the comments. If it's live, we'll do our best to answer them this evening, and if it's not live, we will get back to you. And we've got a few there. Paula's organising her sons. The other thing just worth mentioning is I am going to include people's comments on here, so they show up in the stream. So as long as you're happy for me to do that, I'm going to assume if you type in the comments you're happy for me to share. I'm going to share a few here. Some names I recognise there, so we're going to go for a few coming through there. Let's move that over there. That looks lovely. We've got a good number so far. Let's do a few more. Paula's organising her sons. That's very nice of Paula. Lucy, straight in there on the 18th of September, a few days after my birthday. Cool. Awesome. So let me just add a couple more here. So I'd love to tell you that I've been planning this for years, but the reality is I haven't. I was walking my dog a couple of weeks ago during lockdown, during my 2 hours exercise, and I thought, you know what, let's get a group of people together online whilst everybody's stuck at home and have a good old conversation about things, and a good conversation about the wedding industry, what's going on. Let's get a mix of people. As far as I know, this is the first time that people from the industry have got together to talk like this. There's been lots of wedding shows in the past, but never really, I don't think, an opportunity for people to discuss and share their views on things. We've got people who compete, and I think the idea from this is really to get people being very relaxed. This isn't rehearsed. There are going to probably be mistakes made this evening, but if we are going to do this, to improve from that as well. So my aim going forward is that we will do this with different people. And if you've got any ideas on things that you would like to hear, fire them through in the comments and we'll have a look afterwards to see what we can do. Let's get a few more dates in here. What we're going to do first, the first thing actually I want from you guys is I want some feedback. I've called it the Guernsey Wedding Forum. That was what I thought about 2 weeks ago, but I've decided I think it's a pretty boring name. So if you guys can think of a better name for this type of event, then please, again, let me know in the comments. My favourite, well, I won't tell you what my favourite one is now, because I want to see if anybody else comes up with it. But yeah, if you've got any ideas on what the stream could be called in the future for any future events, then just let us know in the comments. I've said it's relaxed, it's chilled out. If you have questions, if you haven't asked those questions beforehand, just hit us with them in the comments. I'll share them on screen. and then we'll discuss them. And the aim really is to keep this relatively short and snappy as it can be. I'm hoping it's going to be sort of 45 minutes, an hour, maybe a little bit over, but I want to keep it relatively short and snappy, says the guy who's waffling on and on and on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce the panel. So we've got, I'll do it in a clockwise manner. No, Paulie, I don't want you to comment. So we've got Emma from the Wedding Fairy, Jane from White Dove, and Annette from Save the Date. Thank you very much, guys, for joining me. They literally, I sent them a message, and the guys got back to me straight away with, we'd love to be involved. Sounds like a great thing to do. I've had other people contact me as well who want to be involved, and I just think it's a great opportunity for everybody to share their thoughts and views on lots of different things. We've had lots of different questions. Unsurprisingly, the general theme, a lot of the questions were around marriage laws, the changes. Jane's our resident expert on that. She's going to be able to give us her view. And we've had some other interesting questions as well, which we'll cover afterwards once we've covered the marriage laws. So what we'll do is I'll do my intro at the end of you ladies, because I've done enough talking at the moment. So let's start with Emma. Emma's got a couple of minutes, just to kind of up to a couple of minutes. If she wants to take 20 seconds, that's absolutely cool, to tell us about her business, and anything else she wants to say as well. And if she drags on, I'll cut her off, because I can mute her at any point.
You can mute me from the start if you like, this one. Hi everyone, I'm Emma from the Wedding Fairy and Joys as well. I've been in the wedding and events industry for the past 12 years. Various aspects of wedding planning, setting up on the day of your prop, providing props, lighting, everything you need for your wedding. And yeah, as I said, I've done that for the past 12 years with Joys, and then recently took over the Wedding Fairy in November last year. I did have a rather full diary of bookings for this year, but obviously COVID has hit us again, so we're having to deal with that and rearrange some. But the next year, 2 years are looking rather busy, so if you're planning a wedding, you need to start doing so now.
Awesome. And Jane.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jane White from White Dove Ceremonies. I started as a wedding celebrant some 12 years ago, and I think over those years we're approaching now 400 or so weddings that we've done, mainly within the island, occasionally in Sark and occasionally in Herm. I have also been over to France to do one, which was quite an interesting venture. But there are now 5 celebrants who all work under the White Dove banner. So we have some good celebrants there, all different people who can be there to help you on your wedding day to have a wonderful ceremony. We do non-religious ceremonies, so obviously those of you that would like to have a religious ceremony will work with your church or whoever you want to go to for that. So we're the ones who do the non-religious ceremonies. So we tend to follow on, we have done in the past, from a Gref wedding, or potentially someone may have got married in the UK and comes over here to have their celebration with their friends and family. So it's a real change for us coming up that we can complete the legal formalities within our ceremonies. We have had a little bit of experience of it, being able to work with the greffiers when they've come to St James. So we know a little bit about how the process will work within our ceremonies. We're going to be offering just legal ceremonies as well. So there's a lot of things that are going to be changing this year. Obviously, with the issues of COVID, etc., those people who were looking at getting married last year, this year, and indeed next year, I think, are having to cope with those difficulties. So we really hope that we can help them make their ceremony something really to remember and a wonderful start to the celebrations of their day.
Thank you, Jane. Annette.
Hi, good evening. I'm Annette from Save the Date, business owner. My journey started about 10 years ago when I got involved with planning my own wedding. Realised that I couldn't do it all myself, so needed some help. I worked as an apprentice after that for about 2 years with another local wedding planner. And then about 8 years ago, I decided to start up on my own. I enjoyed it so much. My background was finance for about 25 years, but this was my passion. And it's changed so much over 8 years, but it's been a wonderful journey, meeting so many people and helping them on what I call just a really happy journey. So as each year goes on, I look forward to helping more and more people and being involved with them and making friends of them as well. So I'm looking forward to tonight to having discussion with a few people and seeing where all of us can help them. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Anna. So I started, my first wedding was in 2012. I refused to do it 4 times in a row because I didn't want the pressure of doing it. I hadn't shot a wedding before. I did it reluctantly. I enjoyed doing it. The couple loved the photos. Then the following year, I took a camera along to a couple of friends' weddings. Both those friends loved the photos I took. I was very unobtrusive. I didn't take over from whatever the photographer who was doing the wedding was doing. But I had somebody called Debbie who nagged me again and again and again, saying you should do this professionally. So I did it. I got somebody to create my logo for a load of Jaeger bombs. Thank you, Matt. And I launched in 2013. For the 2014 season, I hoped to get 5 weddings. I ended up with 22. So it was a little bit unexpected and a little bit wild. I've done quite a lot of weddings. I think I've done about 200 weddings. I worked it out the other day. I think I've spent about 2,700 hours at weddings now. It's something like that. It's an obscene amount, I think, but it's interesting from my perspective to see weddings from start to finish each time and how different they can be. Moved from photography to also add video a couple of years ago, and in the last 12 months also been live streaming weddings as well. That's a whole different area. It's a very complicated area. It doesn't have lovely Wi-Fi like I've got at home. It has many different variables there. So it's been good fun. So yes. So what we'll do to begin with is let's grab the first question. There's many similar. So I think what I'll probably do is I will post them intermittently through. And bear with me a second. So this is, I mean, pretty much it's going to be Jane's domain here. But we're going to let Jane, not let Jane, that sounds a little bit like we're in total control of what she's saying. Jane's going to talk about the laws and how they change because she is the expert. We've learned a lot from Jane even the last few days when we've been discussing what we're going to cover this evening. But also another common question was about venues. And I think this is where Annette, Emma and myself will be able to give our thoughts as well and hopefully add some value there as well, because we've got a good experience as well as Jane from what works well from a wedding, but we've got, I suppose, a different angle. We've got the decor, the presentation of those places, and also what works well photographically as well. So let's go for this first question. Let's add it to the screen. Let's make it a much more exciting colour, which I should have done beforehand. I told you this wasn't going to go perfectly. Let's make it a lovely colour. Let's go for that. Let's just go for black. And let's put a lovely background on it. Yeah, let's go for that. Cool. So, Jane, marriage law. It's changing. It's a changing. It's going to be very, very different. Let's go for it. Let us know what sort of things people should expect. What's actually happening?
Okay, well, with the marriage law changing, it means that your legal marriage can now take place anywhere within the bailiwick. Now, that's quite a broad range that they've given us, and it also includes the airspace and the local waters. So that does mean that you could get married on a boat somewhere and it would still be legal, but you just have to make sure that you didn't stray outside of local Guernsey waters for it to be a legal marriage. But other than that, within the island, which is where I think most people will want to be married, you can really have your wedding ceremony anywhere. So that includes the beaches, the headlands, your gardens, hotels, anywhere you like. Within the form that you need to fill in, you have the option to put 2 locations. Your first location is where you hope that you will be able to have your marriage, and your second location is your backup. Now, being in Guernsey, we do need a backup, or I can say the bailiwick, really. You do need a backup because we don't have that wonderful luxury of pretty reliable weather. So the main reason you need a backup is if you think, well, to have that backup there in case the weather isn't what we expect it to be, or we'd like it to be. But yes, beaches anywhere are quite within reason for doing your wedding. The only thing you do have to ensure is that you have the landowner's permission to do that wedding. So obviously with hotels and things, that just comes with the fact you've booked in with the hotel. They're quite happy for you to your wedding there. If you want to be on public land, then you would need to get the landowner's permission. This will be the states in most cases, or various departments, and I believe they will be publishing, there will be information as to who you would need to contact to do that. A little bit concerned that somebody wants to get married on Ecal Point and then decides they want to take 200 guests with them, which wouldn't be the best thing for the environment and or safety. So they have to be a little bit careful about that. But really, with the landowner's permission, you can more or less get married wherever you like.
Thank you, Jane. So that's obviously a big change. It's a big change from what we had previously. We've had people getting married in their lounges because they've got to be within 4 walls. This totally changes the landscape. But what we've seen is, and this is actually to Emma and Anna as well, is we've seen a very large amount of people thinking, great, my favourite beach is this place. I want to get married there. So I suppose from your perspective, Jane, to begin with, how does that sort of fit into the law and how that is sort of defined? And then we'll move on to Anna and Emma to then kind of give their thoughts on how practical and that might be, and also the things that people need to consider and think about as well.
Okay, well, over the last 12 years, I've lost count of the number of times I've been asked if we could do their wedding ceremony on the beach. And obviously, because we weren't able to do the legal ceremony, we've been able to do weddings, our ceremonies, wherever we've wanted to do them. In general terms, whilst we can do them on the beach, there are issues around beach weddings, not least of all the weather here in Guernsey, and anybody who's ever been on the beach down here will know that they can be very windy places. They can be, you have things like the tide and whatever going on, but also you have to consider what your backdrop is to your wedding. And I think Caleb will be the one who can focus a little bit more on this. But if you wanted to get married on a beach in Guernsey on a nice summer's day in August, July or August, how many beaches are there going to be that don't have other people on them doing exactly what they want to do? And whilst you can very nicely ask them if they wouldn't mind not doing whatever it is in your little space that you want to have your wedding in, you can't stop them from walking down the beach in their budgie smugglers. You can't stop them from wanting to play football. So it becomes an issue around that. Generally, when I've been asked, I've done a couple of weddings on beaches. Herm in particular is quite good because they don't have a lot of people on Hotel Beach, which is the one right in front of the White House Hotel. But over here, we have been asked a few times, and generally we've ended up near to the beach. So perhaps behind the beach, on a piece of grass, on a headland, so you can see the beach. And as soon as we've done the wedding, done the ceremony, they will be heading off down onto the beach. The bride and groom will perhaps go down there with their photographer and a few other people and have some wonderful photographs. And it really does work well. I don't know, ladies, do you have any other thoughts about what you've done setting things up?
Yeah, I would say for me, when couples they're probably going to ask me, and have done a bit in the past, about they've got a certain location where they'd like to get married. It's finding out perhaps the personal reasons behind it. Maybe it's a location because they've been proposed there, like quite often somewhere in Herm or whatever, or because we live local, they've been brought up on the West Coast, or they've lived locally for a lot of years, so they know the area. my advice would be take a trip at some point before you book it and look at the lay of the land. As Jane said, there's lots of obstacles with the beach, lots of challenges there. But as somebody who's actually going to be turning up on the day to set it up, the lay of the land is really important, because it might be actually there's lots of things in the way of there. You might decide on the get, and all of a sudden the little area you've chosen is ridden with tree trunks, tree stumps, things like that, and then we've got to set out chairs and an aisle and stuff like that, and it all looks wonky, and you've had to change, and Caleb will say something a bit about the backdrop after that. So that would be what I'd say. I want to meet people's expectations and deliver on something I promised. It has to be achievable, not to be put off, because there's lots of beautiful spots in Guernsey. We're truly blessed over here. So it's just about discussing and coming up with, maybe walking the area together as well to see what it looks like and how we can make it work. We will literally move mountains to achieve people's dreams. So yeah.
How about you, Emma?
That's true. We've got to consider all options when looking at that, because weather plays a huge part in that, especially if you're going to it might be a beautiful day, but it could be really windy, and you might have got a balloon arch that you've chosen which isn't going to stay upright. You may have sashes on your chairs which could be flying off down the beach during the ceremony. So potentially not just a dry day is what you worry about, it's wind levels as well when thinking about outdoor, on the beach, on a coastline, on the headland.
It's interesting to say too that it isn't just the weather, it isn't just the bad weather that can be an issue, and this applies to all weddings outdoors. We have done some weddings on beautifully sunny, calm days, and at round about sort of any time in the midday till early afternoon, the sitting out in the sun, full sun, for what can be up to sort of 45 minutes for your guests isn't always the easiest thing to do. Especially if there are young children and perhaps older relatives who would struggle with that. It's hard to put up sunshades or, sort of umbrellas or that sort of thing to give them a little bit of shade. So it is another thing to consider. An area where there is an element of shade is often quite welcome. I do remember once doing a wedding up on the Clarence Battery was a beautiful one, but I do remember doing one on the top lawn at Castle Cornet, and it was at the time of day when there was absolutely no shade up there, apart from about 30 centimetres of shade by one of the walls. And as I came up to sort of get started for the ceremony to get things ready, all the guests who were already there were standing with their backs to the walls, desperately trying to keep themselves in that very, very small bit of shade that they had up there. I felt very sorry for them all sitting out in the sun, for about 45 minutes while we did the ceremony. So it is another thing to think of, is the sun, as well as the very, unwelcome rain and wind.
Yeah, maybe also access points. If you've got any people, sometimes elderly relatives that need to get down to a beach or, go through paths and stuff like that, you have to consider everybody, I guess, that's going to be there. And then obviously we could probably talk about weather contingencies.
Just before we carry on, the guys who are listening, firstly, does everybody sound clear? You're able to hear everybody? Volumes, are they good? And the second thing is, how's the content? Are you finding this useful? If it's useful, let us know in the comments. If you're finding a little bit too detailed, again, let us know in the comments. We want to make sure we're focusing this on what you want to hear, not what we want to tell you. So it's really important you give us that feedback. This is really important. This is where I'm going to go to that fisherman who's in those old films. I'm wearing my yellow waterproofs and I'm smoking a pipe right by the boats, and there's big heavy seas. And I'm going to tell you a story about my younger years. And I very much remember my very first year, 2014, the first wedding season. I had 4 weddings booked for July. 3 of them were outdoor ceremonies. and all 3 ceremonies didn't happen outdoors. They all had to be moved inside. That July was a terrible one for rain. We had absolutely awful rain. We got that was the year where water started coming through road boxes in town at about 10:30 in the morning. But this affected everybody's weddings, and actually in most cases there wasn't a good contingency plan set up for those weddings. And this is why the contingency side is so important. So I think what you guys are saying to us is that if you want to have that wedding, then that's great. But you need to make sure that you understand all the variables. You need to understand all the different factors that will come into place. Like I remember doing Rachel and Ewan's on the top of Castle Cornet, and it was absolutely baking. Everybody had umbrellas. Those are the sorts of things you need to think about. You need to make sure that if it is going to be an absolutely scorcher of a day, which you don't know about when you're booking your wedding, but what you don't really want is in your photos, you don't want me taking a lovely aerial shot of the ceremony with HSBC umbrella and lots of different advertising, lots of people taking their own umbrellas along just to kind of keep them off the heat. You want to kind of provide your guests with consistent umbrellas so it looks nice and it's in keeping with the theme. There's no point in having an amazing looking wedding, an amazing theme, spending all that time and effort if people come along with a mishmash of umbrellas. So it's all these sorts of things that people, I think we're not saying don't have an outdoor wedding, but what we are saying is think very carefully so you don't get surprises. And I think that's the key part, isn't it? It's all about preparation. But I think probably that's 50% of it. But then the other 50% is the contingency. What happens if 2 days before the wedding, it forecasts heavy torrential rain? What are you going to do and what are your plans? Have you guys got any advice in that regard as far as backups and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that... Go ahead, Jane.
No, I was just going to say that it is incredibly important to have a backup that you're comfortable with, and that you feel will give your ceremony the feeling of the way you want to start your wedding day. Not everybody's squashed up in a very small area trying to make the best of what is a difficult day. So be 100% comfortable with your backup, so that you know that on the day, if it does turn out to be the weather you don't want, actually you're quite comfortable and quite happy with where you are going to be, and that it can be decorated in the way that will make you feel that it's as special as it would have been outside. We have to sort of face these things, that we're not going to have good weather and the weather we want, and we will do everything we can to be outside if we possibly can be, but there are always some where we simply can't be. And if you're comfortable with your indoor option, it'll make your day feel a lot more special.
I think that's where, yeah, I mean, our wedding planning is a journey, and we get to know our couples really well. And it's something we talk about along the way. So if they tell me that they've planned this outdoor ceremony and they've booked Jane from White Dove to do it, and it's going to be happening somewhere, we will have had a discussion about a contingency, because from my point of view in setting up, I have to have one. We will talk about that. So things like you say, like Caleb, like umbrellas and stuff like that, this is all stuff that I'm used to having discussions about, making a list and making sure you're covering every area. So just for ease of comfort for any couple, it's something that we will have talked about along the way. If you're planning on having your outside ceremony at a hotel, we would discuss the contingency within the hotel, whether it happens in the function room or whether it happens in a side bit or something like that. If you're planning it on the beach, which probably a lot of people might do now going forward, we will be talking about contingency. So just from reassurance points of view, we would be having that discussion regularly and, making sure we've got a backup plan. It's not just a case of, on the day, what's going to happen now. We weren't expecting rain. We want everybody to have a really stressless day. So we don't want anybody panicking and worrying about things like that even a couple of days before. They will know that a plan is in place for that.
Cool. And Emma, just so you're aware, a couple of the guys have said that your volume's a little bit low, so I don't know if if you want to shout as if your boyfriend has done something, put the wrong thing in the wash it or something. So what probably what might be quite useful is, has anybody kind of got an example of, let's say somebody wanted to get married on a beach that wasn't going to, that we for some reason you thought would be a sensible place to do it because it's not going to be particularly busy, either because of the beach it is or the time of year it is. I mean, I've done a great wedding at Portsmouth, lovely wedding, really nice weather, but it was in May, and it was in the sort of time where people weren't trending really May. It was kind of more deep summer that people wanted. So luckily for them, that was fine. It worked, and the beach was pretty dead. But I think that some of it probably was the time of day it was. It was a weekday. And so I think it was probably 11 o'clock in the morning. It was probably a Tuesday or a Wednesday. But the beach wasn't busy, and that worked. And Jane, you mentioned before about Herm. I've done some awesome outdoor ceremonies down on the beach in front of the White House. Amazing venue. But actually the reality is, for most people, most beaches in Guernsey between even May nowadays and September can be absolutely loaded, can't they? But as Annette said before, and I think maybe one of you guys also said, to find somewhere maybe that still features that but has a lovely vantage point. I think somebody mentioned the other day, if you like Varzon, well, maybe see if you can do it at the headland at Foothumay or something like that. So you've still got that backdrop there. So there are probably venues that we haven't even thought about yet, because this is relatively new. But there are probably venues we haven't even thought about right now that will make excellent places to do a ceremony, to have that vantage point of a beautiful scene. But also you have to consider what the backup is when you're there. And how far that is away from a reception venue and all those other factors as well. Cool. So actually, just before Jane, sorry.
I think one of the other factors to consider if you're looking for a wedding on a beach, and I hope the other ladies will agree with me on this, is the more guests you like to have, the harder it is to set up those kind of weddings. If you really have your heart set on making those personal promises to each other and having that wedding on a beach, but you're quite happy for it to be for a smaller number of people, then the options will be there. As Caleb said, maybe on a weekday, maybe at a time when it isn't quite so busy. There are always options to do it. It just means you may have to compromise on having the 120, 150 guests that you'd really like to have there, and have your ceremony on the beach, but then think about having those guests to attend a different part of the day.
Yeah, no,
I guess as well, if you're a school teacher or something like that, or you plan to have it because maybe family were coming over or family can join in, then the weekends are probably going to be really busy, and even some of the weekdays. But now I think there's more weekday options for weddings, and people are being drawn more towards them anyway, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Now there are a couple more questions that people asked about the marriage laws and things like that. But rather than us kind of going on about that all the time, Sophie Furbush asked a great question, which I'm just going to add actually, and I've just totally messed up a border. But there's her question there, which was how many people have postponed their 2021 weddings, and she's already got some answers from the audience there, which is great. And that's a great question. From your perspective, guys, what have you seen as far as a trend for 2021 weddings so far?
I've definitely noticed people who've got UK family coming over, they're moving to 2022, and they've made that decision based on this lockdown. Whereas there are others who are getting married 2020, have moved to 2021, who have mostly on-island guests. They're planning to stick because they've already postponed once.
I think as well, you've got to consider that some people from 2020 have, had already moved to later in the year. So they'd already changed once as it was. And now they've got a new date in 2021 and thinking, hey, is this going to happen? So it's not just one change. I mean, you must know that, Jane. Surely it's not one change, it's possibly two.
We have several couples who have either postponed now until 2022, having already postponed from last year to this year. But generally, these are the ones who have very large numbers of family in the UK. And actually, it was more the situation with the UK lockdown and the problems over there that has prompted them to push theirs on another year rather than the recent lockdown here. That's been perhaps, there were people prior to that who were already looking at moving to 2022. The lockdown here in Guernsey, I don't think that's made a huge difference, because if people were planning on having their wedding here in 2021 and were going to go ahead, then that would be because the people who are here are the main people. They will have mainly local guests. We've got a few couples who actually live in the UK who would be coming back here to do their wedding, and they've almost certainly all of those have now gone on to 2022.
And we've got a kind of feel for these guys, haven't we? I've got a couple who, again, messaged me yesterday. They were 2020, moved to 2021, and now they're booking in 2022. I've had people who have just thought, sod that, and have gone straight to 2023 because of what's going on in the UK. It's we understand how painful it is for everybody. It's a huge impact to people's special day. We're seeing a lot of people have said that they're not moving, and that's probably primarily because they can't get family. They don't have family who are going to be coming over. Everybody who's kind of major as part of the wedding are already in the island. I suppose it's worth mentioning, and this isn't me doing a shameless plug, but if you are in that situation, there are options to stream. I know it's not the same as people being there in person, but at least you know that people won't miss out on the ceremony. And anybody who's providing a decent streaming solution, so it's not even if you just come to me, but if you go to somebody else, anybody who provides a decent streaming solution will have a backup. So for example, the Wi-Fi cuts out wherever the venue is and 4G isn't great, then at least they'll have a backup copy that they can still put online and still have available for your guests to see, so people shouldn't miss out. And it's worth just mentioning that, because we may get to that point where the UK doesn't get to a point where we feel comfortable in connecting back to for a long time. And so therefore people are going to feel like, do you know what, we're going to just have to do the wedding. We're going to have to do it now. We don't have a choice. We've moved it once. There's no point in moving it again, because we don't even know if it's going to happen then. So some people will just go for it. So it is there as an option. And I know it's not quite the same, but it's part of the way there. We've done a few streams in 2020. They were mixed, really. Streaming is one of the most painful things to do. In fact, streaming is on a typical, I'm going to go off on a slight tangent. There are only two things that stress me out on a wedding day: going from the bride's house to the ceremony, in case my tire bursts, or I get stuck in a traffic jam, or something happens, my van breaks down, even though it shouldn't do. But that's a fear. That's the only time I get stressed during the day. But my new stress is the stream. What is the connectivity going to be like? It's not about the equipment, it's about the internet connectivity. And that's the only two stresses I ever have on a wedding day. Everything else I'm comfortable with. My cameras have got 2 cards in, they've got backups of photos, we back up regularly during the day. I've got no concerns. But going from the bride's house to the ceremony and streaming are the concerns that I've got, and the things that stress me out and keep me up at night. Cool. So let's go very quickly, because I know some people won't be interested in necessarily too interested in the wedding laws. There was a quick question about the notice of marriages for people living in the UK. What's the score with that, Jane?
Well, it'll be the same for everybody, regardless of where they're living. They've made the process an awful lot easier now, in that you don't have to give those documents in person. You can give notice of marriage up to 12 months ahead of your wedding day, which means you can provide the Gref with all the information they need, and you can do it online. So nice. There's no requirement now for people from the UK to be here 2 weeks or whatever it was prior to the wedding and stay here and have to be resident for a number of days. That's all changed. Couples will, however, need to make an appointment to meet one of the greffiers at the Gref at the Royal Court in order to see them in person, to provide some documentation with real copy rather than just things sent through on email. And they will need to do that to obtain their license. So you give notice 12 months ahead, and then at some point ahead of the wedding, you obtain your license. We're sort of looking around about 6 to 8 weeks ahead when you get your license, because if there are any changes after that, they will be, if there's any changes to them, they will be charged for. So not by us, but by the GREF, there is a provision for them to make charges. So it's better that that's all done sort of nearer the time when everything is pretty much finalised, and nothing is likely to come along to change those things that you might want to do.
Awesome. Let's do so basically simplified and easier for people. It was a little bit over the top, but not over the top. It was over the top. Let's not beat around the bush here.
They had to balance the need to ensure that marriages are valid and that they are true marriages, not sham marriages or anything like that. Now, I know that doesn't necessarily apply over here, but when we're opening ourselves up to people coming from other parts of the world, and we're giving them much easier ways of getting themselves married over here, then there simply has to be a foolproof and a substantial method and way of proving that, you know, these are not just people who are getting married because of reasons that aren't the right ones.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what we've got is we've got a question here. We've got a couple of questions, actually. One that's just come through on the live stream, which I'll put up on the screen in a minute. And this other one here. Now, I think probably the best way to answer this one is if everybody has a moment to think about it right now, as in the panel here, would you recommend waiting or rebooking my wedding for later this year due to lockdown? I'm going to give my view. If you guys want to give your view as well, this is my personal view based on just what's been going on. I would say that if you're not reliant, if UK guests aren't essential for your wedding, no, I wouldn't rebook. I'd keep as it is. I think the island's going to get itself sorted out very, very quickly because we've got an awesome team of people. Do I think that a wedding that requires some family to come over from the UK, would it potentially happen? I thought we'd be sorted by now. I really did. I thought that 2021 weddings would comfortably go ahead. I thought we'd have a great system between us and the UK. My feeling now, I suppose my gut feeling, without really thinking about this question too much, I think that probably if your wedding is before August, you know, maybe that is a figure, then you may want to reschedule. If your wedding is after August, you might be okay, but literally there are no guarantees at the moment. Until the UK get themselves sorted out and get this under control, it's literally anybody's guess as to what's going to happen. I know that's not a very specific answer, but that's as specific as I can be based on everything that's happened over the last 12 to 18 months. How about you guys?
I'm of a very similar opinion. I think if you've got UK guests who are essential to the wedding, perhaps look at penciling in a date for 2022 now. That's what conversations I've been having with some of my brides. They're keeping their date for 2021 now to see how things progress, but then they've also got the security of knowing they've got me penciled in and the rest of their wedding penciled in for 2022 as well, just in case they do have to make that decision to move over.
I think much depends on the reasons why, what's important to the couple as to whether they would want to carry on with the wedding this year in Guernsey, even without those UK guests who may or may not be able to get here. There are lots of reasons why people decide on a time in their lives to get married. And I think you guys are probably the same, but I would say that our couples range from those who are quite young and in their early 20s, and for whom a couple more years, if they had to wait till 2023, wouldn't be a particular problem for them. But we also have couples who are a little older, who perhaps are waiting to start a family or thinking of starting a family. Now, for them, in some cases, this option to be the wish to be married before they start their family is quite important. So if it depends on your personal circumstances, what is right for you. And again, it may be while we're in this sort of stage of uncertainty that the idea of compromise has to be faced. And if the compromise is that you really want to be married in order to do something else in your life, such as start a family, then get married this year. Don't put off your plans for another 12 months for that to happen. But, to get married this year, but the celebration of your marriage can take place at the same time, or it can take place at a future time. So it really depends on what you're prepared to compromise about with everything, with your location, with your date, your time, what you do, and who will be there.
Awesome.
Annette?
I think Jane probably covered it really. But I would just say, if I was trying to put myself in a couple's shoes, I think my biggest fear would be, if I try and hang on now and I don't rebook for 2022, a lot of those dates are going to be gone, because it's had a knock-on effect and people have shuffled forward. There's probably couples that have come forward now and thought, we're going to get married, we need to book something in 2022. So, that would be my fear if it was me, is will I get the date I want a year down the line? But it's just an unknown. It's a bit of a, I think from my experience at the moment is a lot of places are getting booked up for next year already. So it's finding those available dates if you do.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I think that's awesome. That's awesome advice from everybody there. I think that just comes a time when you need to understand what is the most sensible thing to do. And I think you guys have covered the points why. Now, we've got a very interesting question come through here, which I'm going to add here. And this is from Lucy. And if, everybody can see it there. If you end up having to postpone your wedding, a company's sympathetic. I think I'm going to give my take on it. You guys let me know what you think. It could be described as a controversial area. I'm not too sure if it is. I think it's kind of getting a balance. As I'll give you an example from a business's perspective. So from my perspective, a couple books in 2020. So they actually book in 2019 or 2018 based on 2018, 2019 prices, but they book for 2020. They move their wedding to 2021. So they've done their first move. They move it 3 or 4 months beforehand. I can't book that slot from my perspective. So I can't get somebody else in on that slot. It could be a peak date in August. That's it, it's gone. They move then again to 2022. All of a sudden, if that couple had photo and video, let's say the package was £4,000 for photo and video. That's probably quite average for a lot of companies over here. That essentially is taken out 2 Augusts for me as a business. That's cost me £8,000. Now, what my view is quite simple. It's about being sensible from my perspective. It's about being balanced. It's about understanding that things are to a certain degree out of people's control. My view is that I'm pretty flexible as long as couples can be flexible with me. What I would expect somebody to do is, if they do need to move, that they check my availability first, and then I can then move that for that couple. So that's the first part. If somebody came to me and said, right, I've moved my wedding to this date, to me that hasn't given me an opportunity to satisfy or to meet their requirements. I haven't had the opportunity to be able to do that. I haven't had the opportunity to tell them when I'm available. So in that sort of situation, I think that's quite a difficult perspective, quite a difficult position for me, because I could have accommodated their date, I could have provided a service on their date, but I was never involved in that decision-making process on the new date. I think that the other thing that that comes into play is, in fact, no, just before I carry on, does that sound fair? Does that sound sensible? What do people think? I think that as long as the suppliers have had the opportunity to accommodate the new date, that I think that's fair. The other thing I think is quite important is that people who are moving dates have to be mindful of the fact that businesses' rates change over time. So if, for example, somebody books in 2018 for a 2020 wedding, but they end up having their wedding in 2023, that's a 5-year change between prices. The prices, well, actually it's a 4-year change, because the prices for 23 would have been made in 22. But what somebody potentially does is they get their wedding taken in 22, when the package prices, the options available may be totally different. So I think what I've said to couples recently, I've said, I don't mind moving your date to 22, but if you move to 23, I want you to understand that what I'll do is I'll meet you halfway between the package price when you booked and the package price it is then. Because I need to be able to, you know, things increase, lots of things increase. There's RPI, there's all those sorts of elements that people need to consider. And couples have been happy with that. Couples have been happy. Couples have always given me the opportunity to let me know when the new date is before me moving. But I think if I was ever put in the situation where I wasn't given the opportunity, I think that puts me in a difficult position. I think it really, really does, because I didn't have a chance to be able to provide service to them. What do you guys think?
I think your position as a photographer, Caleb, is quite it's slightly different perhaps to Annette, Emma and myself, in that you can only be at one wedding on one day. I think as a planner, Emma and Annette will probably, I hope, will agree with me that you can actually do multiple weddings on a day. You can be looking after 2 or 3, possibly more weddings on a day. And as a celebrant, we are in the fortunate position of being a group of 5 at the moment, possibly more by the time we get to next year. So we can accommodate more than one couple when they speak to us about their new dates. I do agree with you, Caleb. It is really important that they do speak to all of the key people, the venue, the celebrant, the photographer, to make sure that we can all be on the same page and we can all make the same dates. But I do think as a photographer, and I know when I meet couples for the first time and talk to them, and they say they found a venue, and they say that they're looking at either Annette or somebody to be looking after them on the day. My next question is, who's your photographer? Because that's the one person who cannot be replaced by somebody else. It is their skill and their sort of photography that you need to choose. So I think it does depend on different businesses.
I think it also actually depends on the time of year. So, for example, what was that famous date in 2020 that nobody actually ever got to get? What was that date that everybody was booking in 2020? Was it the 20th of August?
20th of June, wasn't it?
June, yeah, 20th of June. That was everybody wanted 20th of June. Yeah, you're right. And actually, I had 3 weddings booked that day. So I had the capacity, because I have a team of people working for me. Evoke's not just me, it's a number of other people. I had 3 weddings booked for that date. So actually, what you might find is that even though people have the capacity to do multiple, if somebody's trying to get it on one of those key dates in July or August next year, you may actually already be at capacity with people moving. Because the other problem we've got is we've got people who wanted to get married naturally in 22. But then we've got people who have moved to 22 as well. So actually we've got almost twice, well, in fact, yeah, technically twice the amount of weddings all trying to fit into the same date. So Anna and Emma, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with Jane as a general rule. There are some weddings where we're asked, it might be myself, it might be my colleague Leanne, who are asked to be there as an on-the-day point of contact. And that's generally more than non-hotel weddings, so weddings in a marquee where they want one of us there on the day to coordinate all outside suppliers. And obviously there's only a limited amount of us. We can't be booked ourselves on multiple days.
Yeah, I think the question, a company's deposit, yes, I am basically, because, if you've got to move, your deposit is held and it's carried over. So I don't have a problem with that personally. As far as deposits go.
So I think broadly speaking, the message to Lucy is, from our perspectives, we're all pretty flexible with what happens. But I think the most important thing is that you speak to all your suppliers before you set a date, because you need to give them really, if you want to, putting it bluntly, some people will be more flexible than others. So if you don't want to lose money, get everybody included from the outset before you set that date in. If you've got everybody included and everybody said they're happy with that, then lock it in. Then you save yourself that money there. If you don't consider everybody, open yourself up to the opportunity that somebody quite rightly, based on their contract, can say, I'm really sorry, you didn't get in touch with me, you didn't give me an opportunity, I've lost that slot that somebody else could have now, I can't give you a deposit back. But if you do it from the outset, there's no reason why you can't get that flexibility from most suppliers. Cool. Okay, so let's move along. Just to finish off on the law, Jane, there was that great line that you used about weddings and kind of considering the budgie smugglers on the beach. Are there any restrictions on themed weddings? So if somebody wanted a themed wedding, so let's say anything from a Star Wars wedding to swingers, what is the score as far as themed weddings?
The overriding thing about weddings, and here we are just referring to legal marriages. As far as wedding ceremonies are concerned, that don't contain the legal formalities, within reason, we will do whatever we can to fulfill the couple's wishes. So if they want a Star Wars wedding and they want one of us dressed up as Darth Vader to do the ceremony, in reason, there's no reason why we couldn't. However, when we start to talk about the legal formalities being included within a ceremony outside or inside, wherever, there's an overriding requirement that the ceremony is both solemn and dignified and is conducted in a manner that is fitting with the importance of the promises that are being made and the declarations that are being made on that day. When a couple decides to marry, they are entering a legal arrangement. And it's a very serious legal arrangement because if they want to get out of it, a divorce will take them at least 2 years. So it's a really important part of the day that is solemn and dignified. Now, there is obviously a little bit of flexibility on what one person might determine as solemn and dignified and what other one might think is solemn and dignified. But as long as the ceremony can be conducted within that manner, then really we can accommodate themed weddings. We just have to be a little careful about how that is going to be conducted if there is a legal part included within the ceremony. So, it does beg the question, if people are walking down behind you on the beach, if there's people playing football, if there's things going on around you, if there's noise that is not conducive to keeping that atmosphere as it should be, then we do have to sort of consider whether that is going to fulfill those requirements.
Awesome. Thank you. So what we're going to do is we're getting towards the hour point. Are we getting towards the hour point? Yes, we are. So I want to kind of get a couple more topics covered before we finish, because I don't want this to be too painful for people. But actually, this is a good opportunity to get the feeling of people at the moment. What I'd like you to do, anybody who's watching, is if you found this quite interesting, give us a thumbs up. If you found it really useful, if you've really taken something from it, give us a heart. If you think it could do with improvement, give us a laughing, crying face. Okay. Lucy Thompson, I don't know if it was an accident, but you've done a laughing, crying face already. I'm presuming that was a slip of the mouse, but if not, if you can give us that feedback, that would be great. She's already told us that response before was useful and helpful. But if anybody can kind of let us know in the comments, or using those reactions to let us know how useful this was. Also, if there's anything you want us to cover in the future, let us know. I've got some ideas on things that I want to do. I want to do focus on specific areas, maybe specific themes, specific areas. If there's anything that you want us to cover in the future, it won't be just us. There'll be other people involved as well. Just let us know in the comments. Let us know what you want to learn about, what you want to know. This is it was for the buggy. It was for the budgie smugglers comment. That's why she did the laughing face, Jane. You just let us know in the comments, because it's not just going to be a lockdown thing. I do want to continue doing it. So I want this to be really useful and helpful for everybody. This isn't an opportunity for us to sell our services. That's not what this is for. This is for us just to be able to have a conversation and to let people know our views on different things. So just give us that feedback. Let us know what we need to do. Let us know how we can improve it. Give us anything. No feedback will be taken lightly. We'll take all that feedback on board, and we'll try to make improvements for the future. So we've got another question here. And also, if you've got any questions, any things that have come to light based on the conversation we've had so far, if it prompts a little question inside you, put it in the comments now, or share it on screen, and we'll answer it. This next one's an interesting one. We got this one today, and it is, I can't multitask, but it's about virtual tours. Now, I don't know specifically. Let's just add there. That'll be there for. I don't know if this was if this is specific to somebody who doesn't live in the island. I don't know if this is specific to the fact we're in lockdown. I don't know if this is specific to people just wanting a better experience and being able to choose their venue. But the question is, do you know of anybody doing virtual wedding tours? Personally, I don't. If you guys do know anybody who does that, let me know at the start. But if not, it would be good to get your thoughts on it.
I'm not aware of anyone doing it specifically for weddings, but we had a corporate client a couple of years ago who had the OGH do them a virtual tour before they booked their corporate party. They were from the UK, and a deal from the OGH took them around the whole OGH, gave them a virtual tour, and they booked it there without having seen the venue. So I think it is possible. A lot of hotels would probably do that.
Good. And you guys,
It
any
would be
thoughts?
a good thing for a lot of the hotels to maybe think about doing, especially as there is a hope, some sort of thoughts that the change in the law will in fact encourage people to come here for weddings to the island as a sort of destination. So there would definitely be I think it would definitely be worthwhile some of the hotels considering doing this. It would be helpful if maybe through the summer they considered doing it specifically when they have the venue set up for weddings, so that they can sort of showcase where the various different places will be. I know that there is a lot of, what doesn't replace that at all, but there are a lot of images of the different hotels or places on the island on all our websites, I think, showing different locations, which will help to hopefully attract people to come here for their weddings, and also for people over here when they're trying to make a decision on which venue is right for their wedding. But I think it's a good idea. I think it's the hotels that have to do the have to sort of perhaps drive that a little bit and decide that that's what they want to do to showcase their venue for people that are not on the island. I mean, I think most people over here would know most of the hotels and what they're like.
Yeah.
I think if we're encouraging Guernsey to be a destination place, then yeah, definitely virtual tours are important. I think also, I mean, if times were different and you had overseas guests coming over, then they could look at the hotel before they come as well, because quite often people book in a stay of perhaps 3 nights or even a week based on the wedding they're coming to. So, you know, it would be useful for people to see it. So I can totally understand that. Don't know anybody who does it.
I don't know.
Websites to, to see really.
I haven't seen any of the hotels promote it or have it on their website, so I'm going to get in touch with them. It's something that we can help them with, and I think, Jane, you're absolutely right to do it. Whilst there's a setup in place for a wedding, allows them to truly visualise how it would look for them. Obviously, setups can be different, but at least see it in that context rather than an empty hotel that's suffering from lockdown that doesn't really show it off properly. To see it alive and buzzing is the best way to see it. And Lucy's just said that the OGH are doing a Zoom meeting for them to show us around the rooms. And one of the things that I've already thought about doing is getting some of the hotels involved as well, to have a bit of more of a focus on things from their perspective, things to consider, things that they can that they've done in the past that people might not be aware of that they could do for weddings. Again, if this is something that you think would be useful to you guys, you may already booked your venue, but let's look at it another way. Had you not booked your venue yet, would that have been useful to you to be able to listen to people talk about different venues and to kind of give that discussion point, allowing you to ask them questions in real time about their venue? Again, hit us in the comments with that. Let me just think. I think we've covered pretty much all the questions. Anybody else I've got a question there from Paula, and in fact, you know what, this may be the last question. because I don't want to cover everything in this stream. I do want to leave stuff available for future streams as well. But I'm going to just touch on Paula's question in a second. But anybody else got any questions, any sort of burning things they'd like to know right now? Even if it's not in our specialist area, you can still ask the question and we can still make an attempt at the answer as well. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to make it ultra small. I'm going to bring Paula's question in. So photo group list, what to think about. All right, so I'm probably going to say it from my perspective, because I'm probably the person with the most experience. I tell couples when I meet with them prior to the wedding, the week before, the thing that's likely to get them most stressed on the day is group shots. Okay, and it's not because group shots are painful. It's because the people in those photos are painful. You take people to the wedding, you put them near a bar, they go to the bar. When they've finished at the bar, they need to go to the toilet. So basically, when you're trying to get a group shot with everybody from the family, you've got 10 or 15 people in that shot, undoubtedly, at least a couple of those people are either going to be at the bar or they're going to be in the toilet. And this is the difference between people in the shot and you guys, right? You guys having your wedding. This is one of the most important days of your life, okay? You are there. Every moment counts. For the guests, it is not the most important day of their life. It's actually just a social gathering for them, an opportunity for them to come along, see the people that they're very good friends with or part of the family, see them getting married, see them having a great time. But alcohol, going to the toilet, a conversation with Uncle Baz, anything like that is something that will take their attention off doing the group shots. Most people don't like going into group shots. They just don't like having their photo taken at all. So when you're trying to get all these factors in place, it means that you have to get that bit sorted out. And one of the most common things that I noticed when I first started doing weddings is people went, oh, the groomsmen, they'll do that. The groomsmen can be the worst people to do the group shots because they do want the beer. They do want to get absolutely... I'm going to try to think of a word that's appropriate here. Drunk. And that's it. That's their focus. They consider. No, I'm generalizing. Many of them consider that their main job on the day is dishing out flyers and stuff like that, orders of service and things like that, making sure that people are parked in the right place. They think that by the time they get to the reception, apart from speeches, that's it. So do not rely on groomsmen unless they're an absolute crack unit of people. What I suggest to couples is get 2 extremely bossy people that can boss people around, preferably one that knows either side of the family. Get those people in charge. People love being asked to help out on a wedding day. They absolutely love it. They will feel really special if you say to them, look, we could really do with your help on the day for wedding shots, organising people, bossing them around. We don't care what you tell them, how much stick you give them, we want them in place. And people love, those types of people love that control. They love being asked and being part of the day. That will make group shots work much better. I always provide a template that allows people to add and remove group shots. But this is the other factor you need to consider. If you think of a bride and groom who are very lucky enough to have both parents, so what you could have is the bride wants a photo with her mum, her dad, the groom's mum, the groom's dad, both dads, both mums. The groom wants exactly the same combination. Then they want a combination of the 2 of them with the mum, with the dad, with both mums, both dads. Another couple will come along and say, do you know what? We just want a photo of parents and us, just one shot. So for one couple, that's one photo. But for another couple, it's 16 or 20 photos. I always tell couples, factor in about 2.5 minutes per shot. Whilst that sounds quite high, people need to walk into the shot. We need to take enough photos so everybody's eyes are open and they're not talking, because people love talking when they're having the photo taken. So we take 10, 12 shots just to make sure that we've got a shot that works. And then people have got to walk out of the shot. And when people walk out the shot, most people don't walk out the shot. They go up to the bride and say, oh, you look lovely, because they haven't had a chance to see them. All this stuff takes time. So factor in at least 2.5 minutes per shot on your list, and that's it. And then try to make sure that list is a combination of shots that are really important to you, that will count in 5, 10, 15 years' time, and shots that aren't as important. And if they're not as important, think about combining them together. One of the biggest regrets I've heard from brides, and not my brides, but one of the biggest regrets I've heard from other people, especially when I started, was this photographer didn't get a photo with the bride. I'm the bride. Didn't get a photo of me and my mum. That's probably the most common shot that's missed. I had it once. Where we didn't get that shot, and we didn't get it for reasons outside of our control. But actually, I sent that photo away to my editor, and we actually photoshopped the mum in from another shot into that shot. So the bride still got the shot that she wanted. But that's the most common shot that people miss. But I do provide a template. You can probably search online if you guys aren't booked in with me. If your photographer hasn't supplied a template, go online, do a Google. You'll probably find decent templates there. But just get that balance right. 2.5 minutes per shot, and get that balance right. What is important? What is not important? You'll be amazed how quickly the list builds up. And at 2.5 minutes a time, you generally have got between a minute to a minute and a half. Sorry, you've got 60 minutes to 90 minutes between getting at the reception to actually being seated for food. That's generally the average. You do not want to be spending 45 minutes to 60 minutes of that time having group photos taken. So get organised with people who are bossy, and make sure that list is condensed down to something that is still important to you, but doesn't take the earth to take those images. I don't know if you guys have got anything to add to that from your own experiences or anything else like that. People going to the bar, anything like that.
I think my only comment would be that the only wedding, is sort of family wedding of mine. And I do remember my daughter saying afterwards that she'd cut down a little bit on the family photographs, but she did wish that she'd thought more carefully about the combinations of people, and that it was the only time, and it probably the last time, that all of the cousins would be in the same place, and to have photographs together would have been a nice one to have had in the album. So I think it's maybe taking perhaps a lateral view as well of who's going to be there and who you'd like to get photographs of together.
Absolutely. I think sorry,
no, go on.
No, I was just going to add on to that, Jane, that, and this is going to I have this conversation with couples, that in 5-10 years' time, some of those people in those photos aren't going to be around anymore. And that will possibly be hopefully be the nicest photo they've ever had with that person, because they are feeling their absolute best in the clothes that they've spent a lot of time choosing, that dress. Same with the groom. He's extremely smart. He's probably had his hair done for the first time in 6 months. That's really important. And actually, that's a photo they're going to absolutely cherish. If they don't get that photo, they lose that opportunity. So you're right. And that's why I kind of go back to, it's that balance. What will be really important to them in 5-10 years' time? What if somebody was missing in the future? Which one of those people would you miss in that shot? And just make sure you consider them. Sorry, Annette, what was yours?
No, the only thing I would say is, you've probably said this to your couples anyway, make your photographer aware of who is who, because you might have a really close relative and you want them in shots, and you don't know which one's granny or which one's your godparent or whatever. So in my experience from a few years ago, it's about making the photographer aware who is who. I don't know how much time that takes, or how much whether you get pictures in advance, I don't know, but you can't expect your photographer to know who is really important to you, because you're not going to know 10 singled out people from 100 perhaps or something until it becomes involved in having those shots.
This is the important thing about those two people, those two bossy people. Their job is group shots, but their job is anything else. So occasionally we'll have time where you guys will be familiar with this. The bride turned up late for whatever factor, so there's a lag during the day of 20-25 minutes. The group shots can't be done in time. So I say to those two people, during the shots, they need to tick off what's been done. I don't know all those people. I shouldn't be responsible for knowing exactly who Auntie Enid is and Uncle John and stuff like that. But they should be able to help, and they should be able to do that. They should be able to do that audit trail of who's been captured. If they haven't had their photo taken, then I will proactively go to that person to say, all right, afterwards, let's make sure that straight away after the reception, but before we go out for the evening photos, let's make sure we grab those photos. And we've done that before when we've needed to. But I think it's, I'm going to quote Dr. Brink here with it's really important. I do think it's really important to get that crack team of people there who can you know, basically manage that process from an informed perspective. They know who these people are and they can keep track of that, because as a photographer you have lots of different responsibilities during the day. But if my responsibility is to check in with one person to say, look, remember that list, we need to make sure that we've got those people, rather than me having to go, all right, where's this person, where's that person, where's this person, the process works so much more smoothly when we do it that way.
Caleb, just out of interest, do you ever get asked to do, are these photographs of people that always include the bride and groom, or are they photographs just of the people that they'd like to have photographs of? I would quite like to see, I mean, I spend a lot of time at the ceremony before the bride arrives, where we have the groom and we have the best men or whoever, but we also have all the guests, bar probably the bride's mum who's with her and the bride's dad whoever's going to be walking her to the ceremony. Do you ever get asked to do photographs of, say, the key other guests then, when there's plenty of time and there's no pressure?
So you were talking about before the ceremony?
Yes. Well, before the bride arrives. We have a lot of guests there, especially the sort of, family members will be there.
I guess you're with the bride, maybe.
That's the problem is, it's all about timing. It's all about that luxury of time. What I, as a photographer or a videographer, what you want to do is you want to leave the bride at the latest possible point to get to
I was
the
thinking
venue.
more of a separate, another one of your team there who quite often arrives before you do.
They can do, but in all honesty, there's always time during later on in the day where you can get those types of photos. And in all honesty, this is just my view. For your ceremonies, it's different, but actually for a lot of weddings where it's a church wedding, I try to limit the amount of photos that are next to a graveyard. That to me doesn't particularly work, but they've spent money on a lovely reception venue and hopefully with a lovely backdrop. And actually there's no reason why after the food's finished, we can't getting through those photos. And we do that sometimes. They'll say, I've had many situations where, for example, we've got this family over from Australia. They've never been over before and we've never been there. So can you get a photo of just those guys? So we do get those requirements. I always say to couples, you don't need to rely on me getting a photo of you walking up the aisle. That's a given. That's the thing we're going to capture. But what I do need to know is the stuff that we don't know. We don't know who's key on the day. We don't know who's important to you on the day. We don't know that when we go into that reception venue, we are going to grab the obvious details. But if all of a sudden you say to me, there was a sticker on one of the doors and it was my granddad's sticker and we always take it to every important family event. This has never happened, by the way. But did you take a photo of that? Well, if that sticker said, please keep doors shut, or something like that, I'm not going to know. It's got to be something obvious. So if it's not obvious, people need to tell us about that. And as Paula said, she's going to be closing the bar during the group shots to prevent that. You'll have to close the toilets as well, Paula. Don't let them go for a loo, okay? Don't let them go for a loo. Cool. So I think I've loved this. I've really enjoyed it. And thank you guys again for joining me. Thank you everybody who's tuned in. Amazingly, we've still got more than half the number we started with, which is amazing because we've gone on for quite a while and we're competing against the likes of probably Coronation Street, Emmerdale, EastEnders. We're competing at lots of stuff in a peak time of the evening, people with families and things like that. So we do appreciate everybody spending that time with us, staying here. I think what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up now. I am going to stress again, if you're listening to this again, non-live, put replay in the comments. If you found this useful, let us know using the emotions there. Let us know if you want to see anything in the future. Just whack it in the comments. I will look at this afterwards. But thank you everybody for your time. And I really hope we can do something like this again. You guys, if you still want to come again, you can definitely come to another one in the future where we'll focus on other specific areas. This has been very broad, very general. But thank you everybody for being part of this. Anything else you guys want to say before we finish?
No, just basically well done, Caleb. I think it's been a great initiative. And I know you've put an awful lot of work into getting the process to work and actually getting it all live and getting this up and running. So yeah, I think it's a great opportunity, and I think there's lots of things we can do going forward.
Yeah, I think
Thank you.
brilliant. Thank you very much. I think it's just interesting, just listening to our, each other, what we have to say, and you're learning. We're learning all the time, and I'm learning things just tonight about the whole big picture, and actually, when you had the intro on at the beginning, it was one of them was a wedding I'd set up. And it was actually really nice to see how it panned out during the day, because that's the side of it I never see. So that's just really exciting, looking back at, on their day and how it went. So it's just a great thing to be involved in.
So what you're saying, Annette, is photo and video is important.
Yes.
Love it. I didn't pay her to say that, by the way, guys. Cool. Thank you very much, everybody. And again, I can't stress it enough. Let us know in the comments what you thought. Was it useful? Anything else you want to have included in the future? If you didn't register for the event, you didn't have to. But if you do register for the event using the link that I've put on my Facebook page, it means that when I do something like this again, I can communicate with you and I can let you know when the next one is here. Let me know what you want to see and how you found this. I'm using a system I've never used before. This is the first time I've done a proper live with the system, other than doing a couple of tests during the week with these guys. How did it work? Did comments display well on the screen? I made a couple of little boo-boos, but I knew I was going to make some boo-boos, but I kind of fixed them relatively quickly. But give me some feedback. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a lovely evening and stay safe.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Good night.
Good night.